In this video, we are joined by a very special guest. We have DeeMagicGurl in the house. We are talking about her experience as a cast member. We're also going to dive into Disneyland Forward. We're going to speculate on what might be coming to the Disneyland Resort once that gets approved. And we're also going to dive into Beyond Big Thunder over there in Florida. I also got the Italiano with me up next on OG55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. We have a very special show today. We have a special guest with us, DeeMagicGurl. Now, DeeMagicGurl, I've known you forever on Diz Twitter. I mean, it's been a really long time. First time on the channel. It's an honor having you on. Appreciate you coming.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you and finally, have this conversation after all the years of following each other.
Absolutely. If you want to let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, and I will also be linking it down below so they can just click on stuff.
You can find me on Twitter /X at DeeMagicGurl and Instagram at DeeMagicGurl.
There she is. And everything will be down below in the description. So make sure you follow her on Insta and on X, formerly known as Twitter, as this guy always says. George, welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back. It's always a good time talking shop, and so glad to finally meet DeeMagicGurl and have this phenomenal conversation. So it's always a good time to be back on OG55.
Absolutely. And if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You could find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
See, George is super fancy. He's got like a whole spiel, the whole thing. You know?
Wow, I got to work on it. Jeez.
Super fancy.
Exactly.
But DeeMagicGurl, again, thank you so much for coming on. Let's dive into, before we dive into Disneyland Forward and Beyond Big Thunder, you used to be a Disney cast member. If you want to kind of elaborate that, what part of the park, did you work? How was your experience and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a Disneyland cast member when I turned 18. I graduated high school. I wanted to take a gap year. So I decided to go to the magical place on Earth and take a break. So I ended up working at the Grand Californian Hotel and Spa. I worked the front desk and did everything there from, guest recovery to, making magical moments happen, to checking people in, to giving them park information, concierge, the whole 9 yards. So I worked majority at the Grand California Hotel and Spa. However, one day I asked my manager, I said, hey, it's slow time during the hotel. I know hours are going to be cut. Is there any way that I could go be a Jungle Cruise skipper? And they said yes, to my surprise. And I spent a little bit of time in the jungle learning that attraction. And it was by far the best experience of my life and so much fun. And then I ended up going back to hotels, but it was a really good experience to learn about attractions, how they run, basically work parkside after being at the hotel for so long. But it was a really cool experience to have the magic experience, but like in different places with the same guests. It's kind of a really cool feeling just to be able to entertain them on one hand and then check them into their suite the next.
No, absolutely. Now, one of the things I've never worked for Disney in any capacity. One of the things that I've always been worried about is, like, as a super fan, like, if I work for them, will it ruin the magic kind of thing, right? For you and your experience, did that ruin? Did kind of like working there kind of ruin the magic for you at all because you were kind of behind the scenes now, seeing how they do things, or did it enhance it even?
So for me, it enhanced it, actually. I'm one of those people that likes to know how things work. I like to get behind the scenes. I like to see, I'm very curious. So honestly, seeing how a well-oiled machine Disneyland is run made me respect the game even more. Just because everything has to go at a certain time, everything is down to the clock, down to the minute, really. And it is truly an outstanding way they run the company, the park, actually. I mean, there are other issues, there are other flaws. I'm not going to say it's the most perfect job you've ever had, but it's definitely like I walked away with more magic and just like more appreciation, not only just for the guests, but for the cast members that make the magic happen. The ones who have been there for 50 some years, you know, like my goodness, like they truly are the ones that make the show happen. So in many ways, I walked away, like I said, with a greater appreciation, and it didn't ruin anything for me. It made it a lot better.
That's interesting.
Nice.
That's very
Now,
interesting.
I have a question. Now, you had mentioned that you
Hey,
started out in the Grand Cali and then moved as a skipper. How was the transition
oh,
from that?
shocking.
Was it like, because you
Yeah.
think of it like working at the Grand Cali into like becoming a skipper with like the corny jokes and interacting with the guests, as you had mentioned, on a whole nother different level. What would be for you like the biggest challenge that you had to change
Sure.
like that mindset?
So it's interesting because at the front desk, I would be there for 8 hours, and a guest knew where to find me. So like they know if I said something that they found out was not correct, if they felt that they had a bad problem, they would come back and find me at the desk. So, which is good and bad, because I could be like, wait, who told you that you couldn't do X, Y, or Z? You know, so then it was, we learned a lot about Disney communication, park side and hotel side. The biggest challenge for me was the check-in process was usually like sometimes 30 minutes, depending how in depth the guests wanted to go. Like sometimes they want to talk about their tickets. They want to talk about, should they park hop? Where should they start? And so then you get out the maps. So it was a magical experience in a different way versus being able just to make someone smile with a joke and then keep going. So the thing that was hard for me was learning that change of pace, where at an attraction, you're just seeing a guest for a little bit, saying hi, moving on, moving with your day. Versus at the Grand, you got really close with some guests because you were literally seeing them for their entire stay. They knew your name, you know, they knew where to find you. So I would say like it was harder to change the guest expectations from the, you know, if I on the Jungle Cruise, if I saw a mistake, my immediate response was, let's correct it. Nope, that's, you know, let's see what I can do from here. But I don't have the same power like I do at the Grand Californian, where I could be like, hey, your room is not ready. Let's comp breakfast or something, right? So it was a different experience all around. But I would say it was harder to transition. I actually felt I was better prepared when I got back to the hotel because I had been used to spieling and making people laugh. It was just like I learned a completely different language in a different way.
That's wild.
Nice.
That's wild. Now, DeeMagicGurl, I want to ask you too, like I always wondered this, like with the Jungle Cruise, how much autonomy do you have with the jokes? Like, do they tell you what jokes to do, or can you
Yeah.
kind of improv a little bit, or do you got to get like an approval for these things?
You got to get an approval for it. And Jungle Cruise, I mean, this was when I was working it. I don't know now, so don't come for me and say it's been updated. Before there were no like cameras or anything on the, you know, once you go around the corner, you are on your own. So some people take the opportunity to go off the cuff and improv a little bit. However, if there's a Disney cast member or a Disney manager or somebody on your boat that knows you should be sticking to the script and you're not, then you get in a lot of trouble. So it's sometimes you have to calculate the risk versus the reward.
Right.
They definitely give you a huge script to learn about everything. I know that they were incorporating skippers jokes that they came up with when they did the Jingle Cruise. They were doing it at least at Disneyland, from what my friends were telling me, that they were able to like submit jokes and that was able to like kind of add to the script. And I know there are times that you can get jokes approved if you work with it, and then they kind of incorporate it into the mass, I would say the lexicon of skippers. But you're not technically supposed to go off script. Very, very similar to Storybook Land, where if there's a very set script for it.
Interesting.
Is there like a time frame that they give you to kind of learn it prior to your first cruise out, so to speak? Or like was it a challenge for you of memorizing it, or do they give you time that if you have to go back and look at it or what have you?
Yeah, you have to go through a lot of training before you get your boat full of guests, because they want to make sure you know the script. So you have, you usually wear an earning my ears pin, and you'll go around and do the script until you have it correctly. And I don't know, because I was a different situation, because I was already a cast member hiring in. I wasn't hiring in. I was, transferring. So I really only had about a week to learn all of it. and was able, but I'm also a nerd who had been loving this ride my whole life. So it wasn't hard for me because I already knew some of the jokes from just riding the attraction multiple times.
Nice. And how long were you with the company, like from your start to your finish?
So that's complicated because I then jumped around and worked at corporate. But the park, I was there for about a year and a half.
Cool.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I jumped and worked at Disney Store for a little bit, and then I worked at Disney Corporate up in Glendale on the Imagineering campus, and I worked there, and that was the last time I've been with the company.
Wow. On the Imagineering campus. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that I was nerding out so hard. I was like during lunch, just be like, oh, interesting. What are we talking about? Oh, just being very much like, but yeah, Mickey's of Glendale was amazing there. This is all pre-pandemic. Before I'm sure it's all changed since then, but it was really cool to be on the Imagineering campus and being able just to walk around and see just. It felt like a surreal moment, just, being on that, I would say, hallowed ground.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was sad when it was, I think it was Bob Chapek was in there as CEO when he announced that they're going to move most of Imagineering over to Lake Nona, and bummed me out because, Disney is a California based company, and Imagineering has been in California since its, conception. And that bummed me out. And then, thankfully they corrected that, and now they're staying in Glendale, and now we're getting some of the old guard back. We're getting like Joe Rody, we got Bruce Vaughn, so it's good to see that they stopped the bleeding and they're kind of healing now from that whole era.
Yeah, but it was a hard time. I had a lot of friends that were like, I'm not moving to Florida. It was difficult to see them go, and some of them have not made it back to the company. So.
Yeah, that's sad to see, because you lose people and they go somewhere else. They go to Universal, or they go, some other company, and it's like when you lose great people like that, that's always a sad thing. Absolutely, absolutely. And George, any questions before we move on to Disneyland Forward that you have for Magical?
I actually have one final question for anyone who wants to pursue to have some sort of career or a job in the Walt Disney Company. Is there any kind of advice that you can give out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they asked me a few questions in my interview, and one question I've gotten throughout my interviews at the company has been, why Disney? And this is so funny because as a Disney nerd, I could be like, well, where do we begin? Here's my PowerPoint. From the age of 2, I have loved Minnie Mouse. So they don't want that, though. I found that out. They want someone who's like, yeah. I think they want passionate fans, but I also think that there's a risk when you hire a passionate fan for leaking information. So I feel like you have to find that sweet spot of being like a Disney fan, but not to the extreme where they feel like you're a security risk for sharing information. Because as a cast member, you get a lot of access to things that the public doesn't know yet. So that's a really cool experience. But I think they kind of look for it. But what I usually tell them is that, Disney is important to me. It's been a part of my life. It's, and I love making magic, which is true. And if you really love making people smile and having a good day, like that is what it takes to work at Disney is, whether you're corporate, you are still working for the guest, but it's further removed versus frontline cast member where you're, get on the Jungle Cruise. Like it just depends on your role. But the important part is keeping that thought process. The guest is first, and how to make them smile, and how to enhance the magic for them. And it's one of the best companies I've worked for. It's not perfect, but it is a great company. And I think that, having connections and just, smiling a lot. They told me that in one of the interviews. They're like, we moved you on to the next round because you smiled. And I was like, okay, cool.
Wow. And that's interesting too, how you were saying how that's surprising. They want you to love Disney, but they don't want you to be so diehard about it. That's fascinating. Correct. But you know what? When you explain it though, it makes sense, because if you have a diehard who's super neck deep in this Disney thing, right? It could be a security risk, like you were saying, because they're so excited about the stuff, and they're going to want to tell their friends, oh, you won't believe what's coming to DCA. Oh my gosh, right? So it could kind of get into some issues there. What do you think about that, George? Did that surprise you too? How they're kind of
I never really thought of it that way, but after you say it, it does make sense, especially because it's when somebody geeks out about something, it's you're sworn to secrecy, but it's like you just can't hold it in. So yeah, it could definitely be somewhat of a liability to the company. So it's like they want to kind of pick and choose, you know, as you had said, DeeMagicGurl, it's like finding that sweet spot, you know, for that person that they have to love the company, they have to respect the company, they have to understand the company, but at the same time, you can't be over dramatic about it.
Correct.
Right, exactly.
You can't be tweeting. You can't be saying like, you know, this is the person at the hotel. These are, you know, who's coming today. Because at the Grand, you're able to see a lot of celebrities stay there. You know, there's a lot of trust that the company has with their cast members, and cast members have to uphold that trust. So it's a very, like I said, like you guys have said, a very, you know, delicate balance of finding like who to trust and who not to trust. And so don't show all your Disney colors if you're interviewing.
Right, exactly. So if I ever apply, I'm gonna have to delete my channel probably.
Yeah, maybe
well, too much.
Just go on private. I don't know. You know, I'm not sure how much Disney pays attention to. I know that they pay attention to Twitter and stuff, but I'm not sure how much they pay attention to YouTube and all the conversations that go on. I that's something that's never really been confirmed for me.
That's interesting. And one more thing too, that I was actually very encouraging when you said like, because you smile a lot, they put you on to the next round, right? Yeah. That's great though. That's great. Cause that is it sounds like such a simple thing, but it really isn't. Cause that smile can make or break someone's day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, as a guest, right? I mean, it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you never know. And like, this is something I'm working actually on a project called Tales of a Disneyland Cast Member. I kept a journal when I worked there, and I put them all in stories, and I'm trying to get it into a book so I can offer it to people. And it's just magical stories about different people I met in different walks of life and where they're going and how, because Disneyland is not just for so many people, it's like the destination. It's the beginning of a journey. It's the end of a journey. You know, people are going for the first time with their family, like with their kids. Some people are going for the last time with their grandma, grandpa, you know, Make-A-Wish child, that kind of thing. So you really get a front row seat to humanity. And, you know, that smile that we were talking about makes sometimes the biggest difference, because you're able to see into people's situations and kind of just bring them hope and love in a dark time sometimes, which is like one of the best parts about being a Disney cast member is when you know a family is going through a hard time, maybe they are a Make-A-Wish family, you're able to bring them in and say, let's give them an upgraded suite. Let's give them some fast passes, or, you know, I don't even know what they do now with Genie Plus, but like, let's make these people happy. And it's truly just, I would say one of the best things I think I've done with my life was being able to be with those people in those situations. It's
got to be hard I mean, I'm a softie, so I would have a hard time with like a Make-A-Wish kid, you know.
Oh yeah.
And it's bittersweet, right?
Bittersweet. I was just going to say that would be a bittersweet moment.
Right, because you're making this kid's, you know, day, or I mean, this is a once in a lifetime experience for his kid, and they're happy, but then you kind of know that their situation, so it's also very, very sad. So yeah, that had to be hard. Now Disney, obviously, when you're in a situation like that, you have to contain, like you can't cry on stage, right?
No. You have to be very stoic, but appropriate. Like, and this is where it goes really to think about what Walt said. Like, you are on stage. Like, you are on stage, you are a cast member, you are making the show happen. So by honoring the show, that means, you know, withholding your own emotions, keeping it together till you get backstage, and then falling into a ball and just being like, and thankfully, like, all of the cast members have had experiences with guests like this. And we can all go, hey, this is my guest, or this is my thing. And everyone kind of comes together. It's kind of a beautiful moment where we all have been like, we've been there. We've gotten attached to that kid and that family. We've helped them have a magical moment. And it's kind of cool because we all understand it. And, you know, even now, like, I will reach out to cast members and say, hey, I have a family that's coming in a few weeks, and, you know, they need a magical moment. What can we do for them? And it's a code almost among cast members of, you know, how can we make something extra special for this family? Just because, like, sometimes you meet people who this is their only trip in their entire life, and they have saved for years, and you want to make that as memorable as possible. And it's an honor.
Yeah. No, I love that. And like you said earlier, Disney's a very unique company, and that's a perfect example of how they are a very unique company. You know, a lot of companies don't do that. You know?
Yeah. It builds brand loyalty. You know, it's honestly how I decided to go to college and study PR and communications, is because when you have a brand as strong as Disney, who is, you know, you are making a lifetime impression and gaining a loyal fan for life.
Interesting.
They do it well. They do it so well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dive into some Disneyland Forward, because we got the tomorrow, right? Tomorrow is the official final vote of this whole thing, right?
I know.
More than likely it's going to go through, which is fantastic. You know, what are your thoughts on this, Magic Girl? What are your thoughts on what this might mean for Disneyland Resort?
I mean, on one hand, I am so pro business for Anaheim. I used to live in Anaheim. I was a resident there for 5.5 years. So business is really good for the city. And like anyone who comes out of the woodwork saying this is so bad for everybody involved doesn't really understand like how important it is for this city to have more infrastructure and more tourism and more people visiting. So on one hand, the Disneyland Forward is, I have my own thoughts about what they've announced, but I do think that this is a really good thing for the city of Anaheim. And I think it's just going to help it grow more. And we're going to see more hotels. We're going to see more opportunities, more restaurants, more business. And I think that's a great thing for the entire actually Orange County area as well.
No, well said. Yeah, absolutely. Because you bring it with more hotels, more theme park. You know, they're going to hire more people, more cast members, right? And then they're even dedicating some of this. I forgot what was the official amount for the affordable housing, George. I forgot. I think it was like 30 million or something like that, wasn't it?
I believe it was 30 million. Yeah.
I think it was around there, which is also great. You know, that's also helping the community and the surrounding areas. So it is. It's a net positive for Anaheim. It's a net positive for fans. It's good for Disney. It just helps everyone all around. And Disney this time has been really smart. And I think what's the word for it? I want to say respectful of how they're handling this, right? Because they're not being
absolutely
right. They're not being combative with the local businesses and like, no, we're just going to build the bridge. And, you know, now they're like, we'll work with you now. We'll work with you, work with the residents. We'll do these little coffee shop things. And I think that is fantastic, you know?
Oh, I agree. They've learned their lesson. I mean, when I lived there, they kind of went in with like a bull in a china shop, being like, we own this city. And I mean, they're not wrong, but it's also not appropriate because you still are a guest in the city, you know? So on one hand, it's really hard because Anaheim natives feel really torn because Disneyland built Anaheim, but it also has made Anaheim completely different than what it could have been. So I think the way they've approached this is genius, and they've really learned their lesson in many ways about how to approach from all different angles, all the different stakeholders.
Yeah, well said. What are your thoughts, George?
So as the pro business side, you had mentioned, you know, you're all for it. You know, it's good for the business, for the city. It's good for Disneyland, restaurants, hotels, what have you. Yeah. When it comes to the logistics of Disneyland itself, of kind of rezoning and reworking, what's your take on that?
I think they're gonna they need to tap some of the people that they use for Irvine, the city of Irvine, who do city planning, because it's already congested and a mess with down there. And I'm with the rezoning and the different, you know, structures they're going to do. I'm not 100% sure how navigable the entire resort is going to be after they're done with it. It's just going to bring more influx of people, and I think they already struggle with traffic, I think, quite a bit. Yeah. So I'm nervous. I'm cautiously optimistic, but also like a little nervous for them in that sense, because right now, like, trying to get into Mickey and Friends is a nightmare from the freeway. And on a busy day, it backs all the way up, you know. All the streets around Disneyland just back up. So I don't know how they're going to do that with a good traffic flow. And hopefully that they're even considering that. I also think logistically, they haven't figured out the security problem. And I talk about this a lot on my Twitter, but I don't think their security at Disneyland is great. And I know it's because of unions. I know it's because they don't want to get rid of cast members. And I'm all supporting, you know, I'm not supporting the loss of jobs for cast members, but I do think there are different ways to have security happen, get through people, be more efficient, and not ruin the guest experience, which is happening a lot with the security. So I think the influx is going to be interesting.
That's fascinating, Magic Girl, that you mentioned that, because I was always wondering that, and I think you just answered my question. Because like I was always wondering, why don't they do like like Universal? They have like it's like
Yep,
the airport
yep,
scanners, right? So it's the
yep.
union and the job situation is what the
Yes,
prime.
yes, yes.
Okay.
They believe that going to that or the scanners like they have in Disney World will take away from the jobs. And my hypothesis would be because they implemented the different security at Disney World around the pandemic, correct?
Correct.
Was it
Yeah.
people had already been laid off and let go? So I think they
Sure.
had a lower number of security, so which they could just say, oh, we're, versus Disneyland, they had a lot of people come back. They've hired a lot for the resort. And I think that it's become now a union issue. And like I said, I'm not pro people losing their jobs or anything, but I think there are different ways to think about efficiency.
And I'm with you on that. I completely, I'm for, if they can create more jobs, I'd rather see that than people losing jobs.
Yes.
But I do see what you're saying. And then on the other side of the spectrum, it's as the resort gets bigger, when they start rezoning and they start expanding out
Yep.
the theme parks, possibly more hotels, more restaurants, that
Yep.
they're going to have a higher demand of guest flow. And
Yep.
unfortunately, the kind of security checkpoints that they have I feel like wouldn't be sufficient enough, even up to code, to
Correct.
handle all that guest flow.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a little bit of a safety thing because anytime you have human beings going through a bag or whatever, human beings make mistakes. It's no fault of the security people at all, but it's just we're human beings. You can possibly miss something, and some
just like me, I forgot to take my jetpack out one day, and it was like
your jetpack. Are you the Rocketeer?
I'm the Rocketeer.
That's wild. Yeah. Well, hopefully you're right. I mean, hopefully they do address that, and they're going to have to because they're going to have to move some of that around because they want to expand DCA into that bus load unload area.
Yep.
So all that security stuff is going to have to be moved.
And I'm very I think we saw this in the Chapek era and pre-Good Bob era. Pre-Good Bob era, we saw a lot of executives going into the park and experiencing it firsthand. In fact, Bob actually really encouraged cross-training where executives are getting in the park and walking the park and experiencing what the guests experience. Chapek kind of got rid of that. And I'm not sure if executives are waiting in the lines at security the way that, that we are, or the way that people are experiencing. So I'm nervous that they aren't, I hope they're thinking about it, but I'm also nervous that they may not be even thinking about it. They might think about the influx of people, but they're not thinking about efficiency for traffic or ticketing or parking or getting people in. It's more just like, is there space for them, but is it going to be more efficient? I don't know.
It's tough. It's tough. Yeah, they need to get the executives if they aren't right now. They got to get those executives going through there, or at least do some sort of like. I used to work at a sandwich shop when I was a teenager, and we would have what they call secret shoppers, and they would pretend like they're a customer to see if you're doing your job. Because if you know Josh Giamaro is going through your scanner, you're going to be extra like on point.
Completely, yeah.
But
who wouldn't be?
Exactly. But if you don't recognize that person, you're going to be more on your usual kind of thing. Maybe they can implement something like that if they don't already, kind of a secret shopper kind of thing to kind of test, So that's
Can you imagine if they asked for our feedback? They said, "Hey, Twitter, YouTubers, go give us your thoughts."
I know, right? Exactly. That'd be great.
I'd be
That'd be great.
Well, where do we begin? I got a notebook.
Where do we begin? Exactly.
Now, I want to ask you, Magic Girl, as far as speaking of like social media and on Twitter and everything, when Disneyland Forward, first officially got launched, and there's all the speculation of like what could possibly bring to the Disneyland Resort with Disneyland Forward. And it goes from just a wide range of things of Zootopia and God forbid, another Toy Story Land. And now, of course, the announcement of Pandora, West Coast Pandora coming and what have you. For you, what do you see would be more appropriate to be used for Disneyland Forward, that if they were to use any of those IPs, what would you like to see?
So personally, I would love to see no IPs. I would love to see more, innovation around, or IPs with like a mix in of something that makes sense. Like, I don't know, just not like, I don't like the Pixar Pier. I don't like what they did with Pixar Pier, but I like the idea that it's a boardwalk mixed with a little IP. I think that's would be the best. I don't think Pandora is going to be great, but I do think it will go in. And I mean, I'm happy to be proved wrong too, that it's going to be, the best thing to happen to California. But I think what's unfortunate is that we know it's going to be something probably already created and it's just be cut and pasted over here. But I mean, I would love to see an interpretation on something completely different. But if I had to pick one IP, I would say Zootopia would be probably the most interesting, the most different. We don't have anything really exactly like that here. I could see it drawing in people, but it's also the question is that movie still relevant? This is the problem of building off IPs. I think Disneyland Forward is going to take a lot longer than people are suspecting.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So if we base things on an IP now, I know they talked about Frozen at some point. Frozen came out the original Frozen came out 10 years ago. Let's try to do something else that's timeless or different. So I don't know. Like, I would love to see Westcott happen. I mean, that's my dream. That's my dream.
Oh, this guy. I mean, he's the poster child for Westcott.
Like, I know. And Magical, wouldn't it be perfect in California with all the locals, and you can have that drink around the world thing? It'd be perfect.
Which, if you look at the numbers, I'm sorry, really quick, I just wanted to say, if you look at the numbers, like, they just had the Lunar New Year, they just had food and wine, and it's like, it was crazy packed out there. It's like, so why not have a permanent park where you can get that all year round?
It makes sense.
And it's seamless, and it's experience that people that it won't age the same way. Even like, I mean, I love Batuu. I think Star Wars Land is great, but it is aged already. And like, now it's just like, we have to make more IP on Disney Plus to keep people coming to the land,
right?
And so you got to think about it like, for the Disneyland Forward, for the next 10, 15, 20 years, what is the resort going to have? I also think they should put money into redoing Tomorrowland. I think Tomorrowland needs a facelift, like yesterday. So I don't know. It's just going to be interesting, because I think it's going to be hard if one part of the park is super shiny and new, and there's still original parts of the park that are not doing too good.
Well said. And the one thing too is all signs point to Avatar, Pandora going into DCA, right? And I'm kind of like torn on that, because on one hand, I think DCA definitely needs something like that, immersive family stuff. I mean, it needs it, right? But is Avatar the franchise? Like, if you're going to have, because I've even made the argument with DCA, like, a lot of people think they've abandoned the California thing. I'm like, no, I disagree, because you have the pier, which is California. You got Buena Vista Street and Hollywood Land, and even Cars Land with the Route 66 stuff. Yeah, there's enough connective tissue there, right?
Yeah.
But how do you tie Avatar in there? Like, how do you justify that, right?
That's what I don't know. The only other thing that I could see Avatar working is if they made it a water park, and you get to enter the world of water at Avatar. I could see that working and being unique and different. And, it'd be something that I think like would be just a really unique experience. But I don't know how they'll tie it into California. I don't know how that will work. If you'll go through a portal, that's the big thing now. But
Universal.
I would love to see, I'm just so skeptical about Pandora. I think it's beautiful and in Florida. I think it's unique. It's different. I don't need to go every time. And I think that they need to figure out something for Disneyland that keeps people coming back multiple times, because that is your core base. Not people that are like, well, I couldn't make it to Florida, so I get to ride the same ride over here.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I think no matter what direction they go in, because there's a lot of speculation that they're saying, oh, the Toy Story parking lot would be a water park, and then the third gate would be the expansion pads over by DCA and Disneyland with the Simba parking lot and what have you. And then some people are saying, okay, well, the expansion would be for DCA and Disneyland. The third gate would be Toy Story parking lot, or no, it's going to be a shopping and dining complex. It's like, it's all over the place. And whatever Disney decides, and I definitely agree with you. I think fans, and kind of like what you had touched upon about, being like, you could be the ultimate Disney fan, but again, if you're kind of like on that hyped up train, it's I think fans have this ideal that once this gets approved tomorrow, because it's pretty much a done deal. You know, it's locked in. 30 days after, they expect, okay, we're going to get 8 new lands, a new theme park, and it's like it doesn't. Yeah, it's all done. It's like bibbity bobbity boo, and it's like, you know, it's like
roller coaster tycoon.
Yes,
done.
Exactly.
And it's like it's not going to work that way. This is a 40-year project, and it's like for Disney first has to reroute, you know, for the Eastern Gateway and get those zoning, you know, changing before they do anything to expand the parks. They can maybe do something within the park grounds that they have already, like you had mentioned, like update Tomorrowland, you know, but to actually physically expand the parks out, they can't do that until they get the Eastern Gateway and the rezoning of all the parking lots.
It's interesting. Now, DeeMagicGurl, do you think, because there was an announcement recently that they're going to turn all the Autopia cars electric, right? Now, in my opinion, I feel like that is a sign that they really don't have a bigger plan for Tomorrowland, because they're kind of doing the Band-Aid fix, right? But some fans think like, hey, this is a sign that they're going to kind of go in there in Tomorrowland, and while they're doing the cars, maybe other areas of Tomorrowland. Well, what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you think the electric cars are indicative of a bigger plan, or do you kind of agree with me where it's like, you know, this is the Band-Aid?
I think it's a Band-Aid, but I think, like, how could they also not be on electric already? It was kind of like, well, of course they should be on electric. I mean, come on, what year is it? So a little bit is like playing catch up. The other part of it is, I do think it's a Band-Aid. I do think, like, I mean, I don't even know. I've speculated how one might give a facelift to Tomorrowland, and I go back and forth. I mean, it would be really hard because there's so many weird IPs just kind of mushed together into a land. So, but I don't think there are bigger plans. I mean, like I said, prove me wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong. But I don't think there's a lot happening there.
I think that's interesting. Like you use the terminology like a facelift for Tomorrowland, because anytime that I look at it, I look at the map of Disneyland Park, and it's basically like a face, and then it's like on the right hand side is Tomorrowland. It's just like a pimple that just won't pop. It's like
it is. And Buzz Lightyear, I mean, I went on it the other day, and it's looking rough. Like I think everything. I mean, you could keep those attractions and still really clean things up and make it look really nice. It doesn't have to look old and decrepit, you know? And I think them updating Star Tours is a great sign and a great thing. And I just wish they would show that same attention just a little bit all around, you know, even Hyperspace Mountain. That's a great ad. I love that. But let's try to use, you know, the old Carousel Progress building. Let's, you know, I mean, let's get Rocket Rods up and running again. Let's get the People Mover, you know, let's stream.
Do you feel like, because you had touched upon Galaxy's Edge, and aesthetically, Galaxy's Edge for me is it's very grand. You know, I love the aesthetics of Galaxy's Edge. Unfortunately, on the negative side, I feel like Galaxy's Edge, I always use the terminology, it's like a big pot of boiling water without the meat and potatoes in it. It's like, it's aesthetically, it's beautiful, but there's no heartbeat. There's no pulse in the land. Correct. It needs droids. It needs aliens. It needs creatures. It needs the banthas. I mean, I was waiting for the banthas. And do you feel that because of the anticipation and the high expectation that not even just Disney fans had, but diehard Star Wars fans had, and it wasn't up to par to what a lot of people thought it was going to be, and Disney not kind of realizing it at the time, but they kind of shuttered out Tomorrowland because they built Galaxy's Edge, but didn't even realize that it was its own downfall, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. But well, a lot of this is the thing too, because a lot of the rumors for a Tomorrowland renovation or facelift or whatever reimagining of Tomorrowland was going to utilize those early plans that were going to utilize properties like Star Wars and even like Marvel. But now both of those properties are already spoken for. You already have a Star Wars land. Now you already have a Marvel land. And it's like, so now what IP do you put in there? Because Disney's obviously going to have to do an IP because that's what they do. But it's like, but now they don't have any big IP. I mean, we could talk Big Hero 6 and stuff like that. But even that's kind of spoken for because that's in DCA now. So it's like, what do you do?
You got to call it what it is, OG. It's the Avengers inspired by Google Campus.
There you go. Exactly. Inspired by. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I want to ask you, DeeMagicGurl, too, because a lot of for Disneyland Forward, they're thinking about expanding into the symbol lot for DCA, and then is that the Stitch parking lot? I think on the Disneyland side.
Stitch parking lot, the cast member parking lot.
Yeah. Do you think, MagicGurl, that's kind of I mean, there's obviously the space because these lots are pretty big, but do you think it makes for an awkward? And this is the nerd in me. This is like the nitpicky nerd in me. But do you think it kind of creates an awkward like park layout when you have those like little like extensions, right?
Yeah, and it's gonna feel just like really weird. And like, okay, so I can only equate it to also going like to Universal Studios Hollywood and you go down all the lots. It feels a little weird every time that things aren't connected. So I imagine this will feel a little weird that it's not connected, but I don't know. I think that it's just gonna be like, and here's an added on bonus part that we bought.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and wait, there's some more.
Yeah, exactly.
If you combine it all together, if you look at it on a map perspective, it's one big giant rectangle. And then you have hotels intertwined in that big rectangle.
Right.
So I think like altogether, I feel like the cohesiveness would be completely like out of place. And I know that, I mean, but I don't want to completely count it out because it's Disney and Disney can do anything, that's my belief. It's like, we joke around. It's like, oh yeah, Disney can't build a Star Wars land behind the rivers of America. That's completely impossible, but they proved the impossible. Right. But logistically, I always said this too on the show that I feel like if that became the third gate, it kind of solidifies that DCA is pretty much landlocked to the size that it is now. They can't grow it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And DCA does need to grow out and expand because
I agree. It is not a full day park, in my opinion.
And there's so much potential there with that park, and that's what's sad about it. Do you think, MagicGurl, do you think there's any chance that they will, because they're likely going to add Avatar, is that a sign that maybe they're going to kind of shift that theme? Is it going to maybe not be California anymore?
I could see them Adventure Park do that another Adventure Park Part 2. I've thought about it for a while, like how would they rebrand it, and maybe they would get rid of it. Just I don't know I'm sure everyone here has ideas of what they would name it, but I could see them just shifting it and getting rid of the California part. If we're just throwing IPs out there, I'd love to see Grizzly River Run turn into Country Bear Jamboree River Run.
Absolutely. And there was actually, I don't know if you saw it the other day, Guy Selga. He took a picture with the big bear, right? Big Al.
Yep. Yeah.
See, that's great.
Well, yeah, it makes you wonder why they're doing it though.
It does. We did a video on that actually the other day where it's like, why did they do that? Is it a sign of bigger things to come? Go ahead.
At Disney, a coincidence is never a coincidence.
No. They were reading the tea leaves to see how it went over. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Now, if the Toy Story parking lot, because a lot of people go back and forth of saying it's going to be a third park. Oh, it can't be a third park. It's too far off.
It's going to be Westcott, George. It's going to be Westcott.
It's going to be Westcott. Or it's going to be like
it's going to be Westcott.
It's Westcott. It will be Westcott. Exactly. Or it would be kind of like a West Coast Disney Springs or what have you. Yeah. Whatever Disney decides. Whatever it would be, but just hypothetically speaking, if that becomes the third gate, in your opinion, how do you see the transportation wise of like guests kind of going from the actual main resort and then all the way over to where can theoretically, can you see that actually happening? Or
I could see it happening with the monorail, but like between Harbor and Catella, it's a nightmare. Those are just, it's an absolute nightmare, and they don't own that. So I don't know if Disneyland Forward includes the roads that they would be taking over Harbor and Catella, but those are, the main roads that run into those.
Makes me wonder, since this is going to be a 40-year project, if that would be like kind of like the back end of the project where like eventually they can kind of talk with the city and maybe like, oh, we're interested of purchasing Harbor and Catella, and it's like, or can we come up with a deal to kind of reroute this? So I think on the back end, I feel like whatever they decide to do with the the Toy Story parking lot. I feel like that's more of the longer end of the tooth, so to speak, of the project.
I agree. I could see it being a monorail stop. I think that would work. But I think transportation in between the park, it might be buses, but I don't think it will be. The problem with it being a bus, it's not that long of a drive at all. But it just, with traffic and stuff, it feels like it's forever. So they would need to have very concise, good transportation for it to work.
Yeah, well said. And they can even do like kind of like, I don't know if you guys have been to the Getty before, or but they kind of have like that wide people mover, something like that.
Exactly like that. Well, and I would love to see it. I'd love to see innovation like that. I would love to see them really I think they're going to peak some things at the expo this year, and I think they're going to gain reactions like they do and see how it goes over. But I would love to see innovation with transportation like that. I mean, that's something Walt even dreamed about, was transportation forward. So I would love to see something in the future that kind of brought the parks together. I do think a Disney Springs type thing would be great because the convention center is right there, and that would be just great business for them all around.
That's true.
But also just buy the garden walk already.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Like that was theirs to own like many moons ago.
Right. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, that thing is like dying on the vine, Yeah. It's like it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Sorry, just really quick, one last question. Are you going to D23?
I'm not. I can't do the heartbreak anymore. I get so excited and invested in the projects, and when they're like, just kidding, we killed it. I was there for Disney Infinity when they gave away all of like the Kingdom Keeper stuff, and then literally the next month they killed the entire project. So so I decided I'm just going to watch it from home, and if like people want to get together and get drinks or something, I might head down to the resort and meet up at one of the bars or with Trader Sam's or something. But I'm not going to go this year. It's every time and time again they've proven they can't run a con effectively.
Yeah, no, absolutely. George, you have a few thoughts on D23?
Oh, yes. I tried to get tickets this year, and that website completely failed me. The whole thing just crashed on me. It was completely out of my control. And I will say I did learn to speak full Italian that day.
Yeah, right, exactly. Every curse word you can imagine in Italian, right? That's great. No, yeah, we're going to do the same thing, Magic Girl. We're just going to have like a little watch party or something, and just kind of the comfort of our home.
Well, I think it's a big problem if your top fans can't get tickets to your fan event.
Exactly.
That's a red flag. And I think as they've added more IPs, like I went to the first expo and they were begging people to go, so it's just seeing the growth over the years. And then I went post-pandemic and was just like, I don't need to do this again. So, but it's a bummer because it was so much fun. And like when it worked, it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So our final topic of the day, we're going to go to Florida, and we're going to talk about Beyond Big Thunder. Now, this is kind of crazy because this is like there's so much
beyond it.
What's beyond Big Thunder? What do you think it is, Magic Girl? What's your feeling on this? Because we haven't really gotten any confirmations one way or the other.
I mean, I have no idea. I've heard it could be Encanto, it could be villains. I've seen jokes. It's where Bob Chapek is going to retire. Like, who knows? Villains Land. Like, I don't know. I don't know why they said that. And I think they were just trying to see, like, what do you think it could be? Just to see what the reaction would be. But, I mean, I would love to see them expand on the West, the frontier. And do something creative and different with that. But once again, I'm really into the Tony Baxter, Joe Rohde, low IP type attractions. I think those are the ones that are going to be the ones that are timeless, like the Jungle Cruise or the Matterhorn or Big Thunder. So I honestly, I don't know, but I have a feeling it's going to be an IP.
Yeah, likely. Maybe we'll get the Villains Land thing. I know, George, that was one of your favorites.
Yeah, that was I always loved the villains. But as I said before, if they do villains, I want to see the rough edge, kind of like Dark Kingdom, kind of like I don't want to see cookie cutter, Candy Crush kind of diluted villains. Like I don't want that.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll have you enter through a portal to Villain Land, and
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
do it that way.
Well, and
Yeah,
that's the thing too, right? Because it's like, okay, we have Epic Universe opening up down the road, right? And
yeah,
they have their dark universe,
yeah.
and they know Disney knows how popular the villains are. So they might take that opportunity to kind of be Disney's answer to the dark universe
I
thing.
and I could see that happening. And you know what? I kind of welcome it because I would love to see a fresh take on something that they haven't done before.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And a piece of like my idea, because I mean, like I haven't been thinking about this for over 15 years, but I would love to see like the centerpiece of like Bald Mountain, where you
Yeah.
have an oversized audio animatronic of Chernabog
Oh
sitting on
yeah.
the peak. So at night, that's when his wings open, he comes alive, you hear the music, you got the maybe special effects of everything, and then as his wings close, his wings are made out of a material that can withstand weather conditions such as
Sure.
rain, and something like that. So that's what I
Hurricane.
would love to see, kind of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I would love to see, you know something like that be kind of like the main centerpiece if they were to do something with the
That'd
Well,
be
villains.
and that,
sick.
yeah, it would be awesome, and it would be kind of an answer to two things at Universal. It would be Dark Universe, but it could also be an answer to the Gringotts, that big dragon they have that
Yep.
blows fire, right?
Yep.
It's like
Yep.
Disney's version of that. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm with you, DeeMagicGurl. It'd be cool to kind of expand that frontier. Maybe like do like a Western River expedition or something. That'd be really
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, likely not. Probably going to
No.
happen. You know.
No.
You know. And
But
there's
it makes
rumors.
me wonder: are they doing stuff? Are they thinking about IP that we don't even know about?
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I heard rumors that like they were gonna build a Cars Land back there. Well, not Cars Land, but like the Radiator Springs Racers ride, which is
Yeah.
kind of weird, right? Like for Kingdom Park. I don't know. That would be strange.
Yeah.
That feels more Hollywood Studios to me personally, but I don't know. Did you like that idea, George? Having that back there?
No. I was not. No.
George is disappointed.
Right.
Yes. I am one. I do understand it to a certain point where if someone can't make it to California or can't make it to Florida,
Yeah.
so to kind of give each side for Disneyland and Walt Disney World an opportunity for guests to experience it. However, I'm an East Coaster. I find my way to be able to go out to Disneyland. It's like, suck it up, Buttercup. It's like, just kind of like, I love Cars Land at Disneyland. It belongs at DCA.
Yeah.
I don't want to see an East Coast version. I want to see, especially because it's a ride that's over 10 years old.
Well,
So by the time they actually build it and open it,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
like it already
Mhm.
kind of loses interest with the newer demographic.
it's
We love it because at the time when it was open, Cars was like the hype,
right.
especially with the die-cast vehicles that the boys, loved buying and everything. But to do something like that now, I don't see it part of the demographic.
Well, and that's the thing too. Yeah, like you said, it's actually almost 12 years old now at this point. And then also they kind of did so much hype behind like this mystery box thing, like what's beyond Big Thunder, that if you were just to kind of take that lazy route and just give us a clone, it's like it feels super underwhelming now because you've hyped it as like this mysterious
Yeah.
thing. What are we gonna build? Oh, it's a clone. Like that.
JK.
It's like
The what if clone.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Like,
they gotta
you
come hard.
don't like it? Oh, our bad.
Oops.
We're just kidding.
Oops. Magic, what do you think about D23 this year in terms of announcements? Because Josh D'Amaro has gotten some heat for like the what if stuff. Like we could possibly do this, we could possibly do that. Do you think we're going to get a lot of that still, or do you think they kind of learned from the past couple conventions?
I like to believe that Disney learns their lessons, but I think that they are going to test the audience. They know. I mean, they know we're going to spend our money. We already spent our money to see them. They're going to be using that as a live, I would say audience feedback time to see how they react and what they do, how they talk about it on Twitter, how they talk about it on all the platforms. What are creators saying about it? I think they're definitely going to use it, and I think they will also potentially talk about things that they know they might cancel just to see how it would go over.
So sorry to interrupt you, but I have to touch upon that because
No.
you make a really good point, and I actually didn't think of that, OG. Because we're saying, oh yeah, they're moving people to the Honda Center because there's more people that Okay, they're hyping it something big. That could be true, but actually, listening to Magic Girl, it could be the opposite. It's like, oh, more people for that round table discussion to kind of see like
group.
the focus groups. It's like,
Yeah.
so that's kind of worrisome a bit because it's like if that's the route that they do take.
Wow.
And that's and especially for tomorrow, because if with the quarterly earnings, if they do decide upon Iger's successor as CEO, and tomorrow is part of the running, and he decides to give him a shot, but they kind of do that at the expo after they make the announcement.
Right.
That's kind of telling.
And Magic Girl, what he means by that too is like, because tomorrow is the quarterly earnings call, but I guess they're doing it differently tomorrow because usually they wait till after the bell.
Right.
I guess tomorrow they're doing it before the bell.
Interesting.
They're doing it before the birds wake up.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of weird, because it's like, so people are speculating like they must have a big announcement, whether maybe it's going to be something like Disney Plus is profitable now. Maybe it'll be something like George was saying, a successor or something like that. But interesting stuff tomorrow, we'll have to see.
No, I think you're right. I think nothing Disney does is ever on accident.
No.
So,
no.
and I think some people think they just wake up and they're like, we should do this. And I'm like, no, these are all moving pieces and every department has to talk to a different department to get approval for things. So, there's a lot of things in the works, but I don't know if at D23 we're going to get the answers we want. I'm hoping we get a Tiana date for Disneyland.
Yes.
I think that's probably the most I could see them saying, we're going to open it on this day and this is your exclusive announcement. The thing, if I'm Disney, I know I'm going to have to give something of substance to my fans or they're going to come and just destroy me. So they have to be willing to give something up. So because they're offering us to come into their house. And if it's just an hour and a half long infomercial, everybody's going to be really upset. So I'm hoping that they actually have some really good information this year. Do I have to I don't hold them to the things where they're like, well, about 10 years, we're thinking about doing this because things change. But it's the immediate things that we all want answers to. I'm hoping they can give us some clarity, like what's going to happen with Dinoland.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that one's pretty much further along the pipeline than Beyond Big Thunder. So yeah, we should definitely get some hard grind decision making, what actually is it?
Right. More details on we get that. We can get some more details for the West Coast on Pandora. Maybe even finally that Avengers e-ticket that they've been promising forever.
Yeah, what happened to that?
Stuff like that. I think we kind of have. That's the stuff that tomorrow really has to deliver on. If he can deliver on some of that big stuff, then he can get away with a few what ifs sprinkled in the mix. And
I think though his succession is based on if he goes in there and doesn't offer information and it's not his fault. I know who's prepping his decks is not him, but I know that. It could look really bad for him and his overall morale if he was chosen as successor would be seen as really bad because he hadn't delivered anything to the fans. And ultimately fans do know it's a business, but don't invite us to a fan event to give us an infomercial.
Exactly.
And be like, come to Alani. Okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Magic Girl, it was absolute honor having you on today, talking shop. You're always welcome back. Always welcome back.
You guys have been a blast. I've loved chatting with you guys, and we'll definitely do this again.
Absolutely. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Yep, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, X, DeeMagicGurl.
There she is, and I will link all of that down below in the description. The Italiano. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. Here comes my spiel. Okay.
There it comes.
If you'd like to find me on social media, you could do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, at DisneyGeorge. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There he is. Comment down below with all your with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today. Disneyland Forward, what it takes to be a Disney cast member, Beyond Big Thunder, the expo, all that good stuff. We would love to hear from you. Magic Girl, my outro. I'm a K-pop fan, so I weave in K-pop with my outros. So here we go. Yeah, let's do it. Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Thanks.
세상은 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.